I will begin by sharing a quote from Joseph Sugarman, who was considered a legendary copywriter and started the JSNA group. Each time you are honest and conduct yourself with honesty, a success force will drive you toward greater success. Each time you lie, even with a little white lie, there are strong forces pushing you toward failure. I feel like this quote speaks for itself. Honesty is an important step for success. Honesty can help an individual learn how to handle difficult situations and help the individual grow as well. Lying can be seen as an easy way out of stressful situations, but it can lead to more stress. If an individual lies, they must make sure to stick to that story. It can create a path for even more lies, leaving them in a vicious circle. This leads to the chance of people finding out they were dishonest and breaking trust. If others can trust you, it will lead to lasting and honest relationships. The honest interactions lead to a positive environment, which then leads to a successful environment. For example, if I chose to lie about making a mistake at work and the truth was brought forward in the future, I would then be seen as dishonest and would no longer have trust from the company and my coworkers. This would lead to a negative work environment overall and could even be a deciding factor on if I would continue to be employed by the company. With honesty, I would not have lost that trust, along with being at risk of losing my job. The truth will always come out, therefore it is better to be honest from the beginning.
I agree with you in a professional standpoint that honesty is typically the best option just due to it can come back and bite you and all that good stuff. But all the time, maybe not. I'm looking at it from more of a personal perspective, like personal relationships. So it's never, I'm not going to say it's okay to lie, but sometimes it is the best option in order to shield a person from what they need to be shielded from, whether it's someone who's just not ready to hear, typically bad news, or they're going through a rough time as it is and things are collapsing all around them and they just don't need that extra bit of bad news. If you understand what I'm saying. But as far as what you were talking about in a professional aspect, I 100% agree. But in personal, it's just kind of, I think there's a little room for error there. So I'm going to begin my opening speech. So, like I said earlier, many people argue that honesty is always the best policy. And like I said, now I agree that it is important to be honest, and it's a great trait to have, and it shows a person's character and what kind of values they hold. But for it to be the absolute best policy all the time, I disagree. In certain situations, it's better to withhold truth for several reasons. I remember back when I had a pet get disappeared. Like my pet just disappeared and it was gone. And my parents lied to me, telling me so my dog got mauled by another dog, brutally murdered. I was about 5, 6 years old. And my young mind hasn't been around much violence. So in order to be hit with all that brutality, how would I be affected by it in the future, and how would I react in that time? So it's easier to just lie about not what happened, but how it happened. They told me that my dog ate too much food and got sleepy and died. They didn't necessarily tell me how brutal and terrible the death actually was. But it's situational, when to be dishonest and when not to be. In this current situation, I feel like it was better to be dishonest to protect me from the brutality of what actually happened to my dog. And I feel like that was the best thing to do in that situation.
I understand where you're coming from there. Um, they didn't necessarily lie to you about the fact that your dog died, but the way that it happened, because at that age, people may not necessarily be able to handle that type of information. I do feel that it could still possibly lead to distrust in certain situations, but you did say it was situational, which I can agree with on occasion, that um, lying may be the direction to make things easier on another person. Okay. And in closing, I would just like to suggest some ways to avoid being dishonest. First, do not think about the negative outcomes from a situation. Telling the truth will lead to a more positive outcome. Second, have faith in your peers, coworkers, and employers. Don't assume that they won't understand. People sometimes surprise you. Third, think carefully about how you will present the issue. Make sure you are respectful along with being honest. People will be more understanding if you present yourself as kind and reliable. And lastly, look at it as an opportunity to improve yourself. Each time you practice honesty, it improves how we interact in these situations. And of course, I'm speaking from a business standpoint. So thank you for listening to why I believe that honest is the best policy.
I'm going to begin my closing speech. To conclude, I do feel that honesty is a very, very important policy to have in one's life. But I also feel that it's equally important to know when it is appropriate to be dishonest. I'm not saying that you have to be dishonest with everyone and everything, but however, how I previously mentioned, it's situational and at times a necessary evil, you could say. But to answer the question of the discussion, honesty, while important, is not always the best policy, in my opinion, from a personal standpoint. But thank you for your time and allowing me to speak my opinion on the matter.